All right, everyone, it's a Monday morning and you look at your calendar and there is a 1 hour meeting on there and it says Leadership Alignment Meeting, Project Zephyr. You have never heard of Project Zephyr. You have no idea what's going on. You show up in the meeting and behind your leaders and behind HR are these gorgeous branded little backgrounds and they have a really polished slide deck and they tell you, all right, everyone, your job is to get everybody on your team in line. Here's the message. Here's how you're going to deliver it. Here are your talking points. And in your gut, you can feel this moment of tension because as beautiful and as branded as it is an absolute and complete lie. And your job now is to sell it.
Welcome to Why Not Lead Like People Matter. No buzzwords, no spin, just real conversations about leadership where people are not the process, they're the point. I'm Ryan Salestead, creator of the Cared Leadership Method. I help leaders replace fear-driven systems with curiosity.
I'm Rory Sylvia, and I help teams work better together by moving them from leader-led to team-driven so we don't have superhero managers running around anymore.
And I'm Nicole. I'm an organizational strategist, behavioral researcher, and probably the only HR philosopher you know, which means that I get to be your favorite HR philosopher. I believe that transparency isn't just a buzzword, it's a form of service. And when we align what we say with what we do, we give our leaders and teams something really powerful back, the ability to tell the truth. So today, I'm here with Ryan and Rory, and we are going to talk about what happens when systems don't match the values on the wall and leaders end up carrying that lie and the cost of that lie.
I'm looking forward to this.
Ryan, why don't we go ahead and start with what you're thinking about this?
Yeah, when we're talking about if you're asked to share something that you're not fully bought into or go along with it, it all comes back to where your values are and if they're in alignment with what you have to share, what you have to put forward. I've definitely been in situations where the things that were asked of me were not where my values were. And I've found there are times where I've been able to look past that and find ways to move forward. There's also times where I've had to make workarounds and had to make it so that my values fit in there. I've also been in situations where I had to speak up. So
it's really hard to navigate. Rory, from a team perspective, how do teams set up systems so that they can work through these kinds of things? Because it's not an uncommon scenario.
Yeah, I think the best teams are built on transparency and honesty. So a lot of times leaders have this default to not being transparent. Like, oh, I'm not going to share this information with my team because they can't take it. Like, we're all adults. We can take it. We all have lives with really tough stuff that happens. Like, we can take the bad news. And if there's bad news, like a leader is waiting to share, then oftentimes it gives the leader the opportunity to process it. And then by the time they actually break the news to their team, they've already moved on. So it can have the effect of like not giving the team the space to process and grieve if necessary. So it can just totally ruin a team if you're not being transparent, where, if it were me, I would just say to my team, like, hey, I'll trust y'all. I trust y'all inherently. And here's this thing that's coming. I really don't like it. And we have no choice but to figure out how to make sense of this for ourselves. So let's create a space and time to process this as a group. And then after we've been able to do that, we can figure out a good way forward.
Yeah, let's focus on what's actually in our control versus what's just coming from outside.
Yeah. But if you miss that opportunity to grieve, and I've been in this position when I was an individual of a leader coming and like telling our team that was responsible for hybrid ways of working at a corporation, hey, you need to create a strategy to convince people to come back into the office. And that was against what all the data said. And that was a values thing for me of trust and transparency and optimizing for growth and learning. And it was in contradiction to that. So because I was never given the time to grieve that, and the boss was just like, deal with it, move forward, I just dug in and I basically refused to do it. And, that was me also showing what I valued there. It was going against my values to do this thing. And that would have had a way worse effect than not digging in.
I just started thinking about some of the times that I've been in these situations. You're right. I think the times where I've been in those situations where I've come to my team and gone, the way we should be doing it this way is not necessarily what I would do. And that transparency is important because you lose that trust. And I've definitely been in those situations where I've been like, okay, they're driving us towards numbers. They say that we need to meet this many numbers, and it kind of doesn't matter what we do. Well, that's not necessarily in alignment with our values. We value putting out good work and that sort of thing. It's not just about the numbers. How can we make both things true so that we're clear-eyed about what we're being asked and what the reality of our organization is asking us, but also making sure that the team is not having their values violated.
Just capping that off, just like if you can get that alignment with your team too early on versus waiting to share the news, then it gives you the opportunity, one, to process it, but then, okay, we have to do this thing. So how can we use this in a way that feels not sleazy for us? And then maybe there's an opportunity to be ahead of this and shape what actually happens in a way that does benefit us, benefits the people without being totally heartless.
Yeah. You see a lot of leaders fall into the trap of trying to get the perfect messaging as opposed to the most honest messaging. And the more you sort of workshop it and try to figure out the best way to kind of spin something that people aren't going to like, it's going to be received even worse, no matter how well you polish that and get your message across. Having those nice slide deck and all that stuff about what the process is, having them buy in early.
Polished turd is still a turd.
Indeed.
That's the name of the episode.
Glitter on poo. I think there's this whole piece there right around credibility, though, and how we build trust with our teams and how showing up with the truth really does turn that into an advantage for us as leaders. And also the need to go through this grief together. Because I've definitely sat in meetings where it was really clear that my leader had already gone through all of the emotions. And so they were a little impatient for all of us to catch up. And so they show up and it's just a mismatch, right? They're like, I'm really excited about, and you're like, excited? You just told me that half my friends are disappearing. I don't want ice cream right now. I want to go like cry in a corner. What are you talking about? And so it really, there's this part of being a team where you share those emotional experiences, and if leaders are doing it separately, they're not feeling like part of the team. So the soapbox that I like to get on a lot of times the do another is a habit or a policy or a procedure that's just the way things are and not necessarily the truth. And there's really great value in both. And so leaders are navigating this for themselves, but leaders are also part of the team they lead and teams above them. And so when we sit in these sort of moments, how do we go through those emotions in a way that's productive and that lets us acknowledge, okay, I'm going to back up a step. Scientifically, the reason it's a problem to be out of alignment with your values is because it creates this sort of moral injury moment. And so how do we acknowledge that wound and give ourselves the chance to heal it a little bit, but also still do our jobs?
Transparency is ultimately very important. I've definitely been in organizations where people have pushed through policy knowing it was going to be unpopular. And then they're pushing it out with the armor on, the defenses up, and they know they're going to hear criticism about it. And then they have bought into whatever they built behind closed doors as the truth and the way forward. And the reality is, sometimes you'll create a policy or you want to go in a direction. And when you get that feedback, you have to be receptive to it. Even if you have 20 people that you trust that are in that C-suite, sometimes they don't have the reality that the people that you're imposing this thing on are actually living day to day. And so when you wait so long where you've circled the wagons and gotten everybody together and are ready to launch that initiative without anybody else's input, and it's going to affect them, it's sort of a recipe for disaster, especially if you know it's going to go wrong and you're just really sort of you're managing people, you're not leading them. You're just putting them in a place to kind of go, okay, I need you to do this. These are all the reasons I'm going to make you do this. I've seen it so many times where someone who's outside of that group goes, wait, hold on, you're forgetting a big piece. And at that point, they're already down the road and they've gotten the printed material and whatever else. They're selling it. It's already there.
I think for what I was going to ask Rory, I think that there's probably some room within this where the experimentation philosophy that you bring would really prevent some of those kinds of issues. What do you think?
Well, and as soon as you ask your team, you're giving them the opportunity to create ownership and some meaning and a little bit of, I would say, control, because where they might be reactive, like this thing is happening to me. Yeah, that sucks, but what can I do? But when I think of like steps to get there, you could experiment with is like for myself, I want to process and grieve first if I'm the leader, which is probably with my people I trust, in my trust circle. Maybe that's my leadership team. Maybe it's not. But then preparing how I'm going to deliver this to my team. What's important to them? What can I think about ahead of time that they need to know about? And how can I deliver this in a kind way with no expectation of moving forward immediately? Like the next step would be deliver it and then create space to process, to be pissed off, to get all the feelings out so people can do that and actually grieve and align on just that experience. So even if it's, I hate this, it sucks. Okay, well, we have to figure out a way forward, and that's where I need your help. So as a leader, now you're not trying to make the perfect plan. Yeah, it is experimental in that you're trying something new. Maybe if you've never done that, if you've a typical leader would like white knuckle the whole thing, have to be the perfect leader and do all the great things here versus we're all humans. How can we navigate this together? Now you're bringing your team in, you're building trust by sharing what you're unsure of, being vulnerable. And so there's so many benefits to doing it more transparently and not trying to white knuckle it. Doesn't feel us. Here's where we want to be. So how do we get there?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the answer I come back to over and over again, and I'm absolutely happy for the two of you to prove me wrong, but I think the answer is prevention. You have to talk about these issues ahead of time and plan for the fact that they are going to come up, and really just talk about the fact that this is a reality of the way work works. And so how do we leave room for that to happen and give ourselves space to work within it?
Let me ask this question. Is there a cost of leaning in too far to loyalty versus too far into honesty?
What do you mean too far loyalty? Like as a manager, I'll drink the Kool-Aid, do anything they say?
Yeah, sort of keeping the company line, doing what's been asked of you versus you have that tension where something's coming from above, but yet you're in that middle manager position and you want to be honest and you want to be fair, but you also want to make sure that you're meeting the organization's objectives. Where's that line, do you think? Where does this cost people too much?
So I have hired people to be smart. And so if I take smart people and treat them like not smart people, I'm causing problems. And so I have a very difficult time lying. I think I'm in good company here. So
Yeah.
I tend to lean very heavily on the side of honesty, and how I've navigated that in my career is when I'm interviewing. That's one of the things I talk about because I believe very firmly in having a good match. And so I will say, listen, I have difficulty lying to people. So if you routinely make your leaders lie to people, I should not be one of those leaders. And I recognize that there is a level of privilege that comes with being able to say that. If I don't have a job, I'm not going to lose my home right now. There are plenty of people who are stuck like that. And so where people's lines are is going to vary really wildly. And I think also some aspects of neurodivergence just make us less able to be the Kool-Aid servers than others.
Yeah.
It's a good point. And I think that when we talk about the cost, I think there is a time where you can reset your outlook on things and you can see things through a positive light. You can kind of have time to adjust things. But I think that when you're being asked to do something that is inherently goes against the grain of your values and goes against who you are, then that's where the line is. A lot of times when I've had these situations, and I've gone to a leader who is making these decisions and I don't necessarily agree with them, I'll have conversations about what their thought process is. And I understand that like a lot of employees and a lot of people who are reporting to other leaders don't give people the benefit of the doubt. But I think that it's important to kind of go, okay, what are we actually trying to achieve here? What is the actual objective here so I can get behind it? And I think that that has always been helpful to me. And I think that's where we go back to talking about like, when you include people in the process all the way along, they actually get to see the thought process, not just the final product. They go, okay, I can see. And here's all the obstacles that came up in our way to get to this decision. Because I don't think most people don't act maliciously or try to make people uncomfortable. Most people have good intentions. Sometimes you have to show your work.
Oh.
and that's just kind of what it comes down to. It's one thing to just go, here's the answer. And we came up with it when you guys weren't looking. And everybody goes, how'd you get that? Like, that's not fair.
What do you mean 2 plus 2 equals Tweety Bird?
Yeah.
Something that's really helpful
I kind of get
and a tool for people to use. There's a video on YouTube around polarity management and just the difference
Yes.
between a problem and a polarity is a problem can be solved. A polarity is an unsolvable problem. It can only be managed. So if I'm coming into this, some of the polarities I'm feeling around this are loyalty to company over here and then loyalty to people over here. If I do one of them too hard, it's not going to be good. And you lurch back and forth. You see this happen in organizations all the time, but we got to figure out how to go down the middle. So this is our goal. We're not giving specific steps how to get there, but we're going to have to manage our way through this. Another one there, the polarity is probably like truth versus spin. Like, yeah, we want to tell the truth and frame it in a way that hopefully is positive and helps people move forward. So I think there's no right or wrong way to do it. Like every situation is going to call for something different. And that sucks to hear, but
It was an excellent
it is
poll,
what it
Rory.
is.
I love so
That middle ground.
yeah. I think there's
Yeah,
something that we started to get into, and then we kind of like drifted off. But when we're thinking about this loyalty piece, the spin piece, and the like managed messaging piece of it, those scripts are almost always written in favor of the organization, not necessarily in favor of the employees. And I'm going to take it out of people ops for a moment because I feel like this is something that's super personal to all of us. And I'm going to pretend we're salespeople. And I know salespeople who have been put in the position of telling their customers, even the customer relations management people, their CSMs or whatever, who have to communicate things like price raises. And they have to communicate them, but only in a positive way. They've been given this, you're not allowed to talk negatively about it. And they're like, okay, but it's a price raise. I come join me in reality for a moment. And I think that is one of the things that the scripts are meant at their heart to be a toolkit for us, but they often fail to acknowledge the reality of the negative impacts of the change we're being asked to message.
I literally had this conversation with a client like an hour ago about having sales reps that didn't want to communicate a price change to a manufacturer because of the tariffs.
Oh,
And so, well, they already got one email from someone else. So I just ignored it. Like, whoa, no, you need to go talk to them and create space and like have a relationship with them. Like, don't just ignore it.
Yeah. So much of this just comes back to just not lying and being honest and being open. The things that we learned in kindergarten and the things that we learned as children still apply. People don't like feeling like they're being managed. I think that's most people, when they realize that someone is working off a script and is trying to sell them, they've already thought through all the reasons that you're going to say no.
Yeah.
And they're trying to shortcut that and trying to not give you space to have an honest expression of what you're feeling. It feels like you're sitting in a timeshare thing where you're just being that high pressure sales.
Yeah.
I'm more resistant to someone trying to sell me something if I know that they're trying very hard to sell me something, I'm like,
We all
no.
are.
Don't be a liar. And
Go back to
Be
kindergarten.
transparent. Find space to wade through the messy.
yeah,
Yeah, we constantly see this. It's just this constant thing of like the people I've hired. You talked about the people being intelligent. The people I hired to be intelligent, to understand these things, to be experts in their areas. Well, we're going to roll out this policy. We're going to roll out this thing that's going to affect all of them and how they do their jobs. I don't know how they do their jobs, but I'm going to make a lot of assumptions, and then I'm going to put that on them and expect my middle managers and my leadership who's in the middle to kind of just sell it. And yeah, we wonder why it backfires.
actually, that reminds me, there is a hidden message in all of this that really is problematic. So say you give your leaders their talking points and they've got them and they're doing their timeshare salesperson routine and they're really, really like trying to get people bought into it. Not only have you taught your employees that you will lie to them because they're, again, not stupid, but you've also taught them that leaders at your company are required to lie. And so now anyone in the lower, like individual contributor level who has honesty as a core value is looking at this and saying, not for me, buddy. And so now you've also destroyed your leadership pipeline.
Yeah.
Truth.
Well, I think about the difference between where we talk about like a real actual leader who's actually concerned about people and then someone who's just managing people. If you're just managing people and you're just trying to move them from point A to point B and they are part of the machine that you're just sort of working on, as opposed to leading them where you're actually caring about how they show up and how they feel, the things that I would consider a leader. I think that we oftentimes promote people who are really good at managing people in that way of moving them from place to place, coaching them out the door if they're a little bit different. The manager is going to manage a situation in the optics, and you might be a really good manager, but that doesn't mean you're a good leader, because the leader is going to be concerned with the buy-in. So many mistakes in my career were made when I confused those two things. When I went, okay, well, to be a good leader here, I have to do this. And it was against what I felt leader should do, but I hadn't made that distinction yet. And that, I think, was a really important distinction for me. And when I look back I really do. I look back all the time and I go, man, I really screwed that up. Why did I do that? It's like, oh, because I was trying to manage that person, not
So
lead that
instead of
person.
manage, the word we could be using is manipulate.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, Rory.
Yes, it
So
is.
we're designing
Yeah.
teams. We're designing teams so that we don't have manipulators as the lead.
What do we do differently?
Yeah. Make
Yeah,
it make
I
it
mean,
work.
well, if you're the leader, like, you're gonna screw up. We all screw up. Teams screw up. It's the learning that comes from it. So were it me, I hope that after I do this, like, I can ask the team, hey, how did I do? What worked? What didn't? And then you can learn from it, because they're gonna tell you what didn't work.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Leaders
do
who
it
don't
alone.
know until the last minute.
You're screwed.
Work for a different company that doesn't do that to
Yeah.
your leaders?
Well, and again, that's the leaders above that.
Yeah.
That's their.
Mm.
You're gonna get what you get there, because you probably have people who are gonna be grieving or pissed or whatever that are gonna deliver this. Probably very straightforward and gloves off to their team, and so yeah, what's gonna be the best for your business there?
All right. So what do we do with this information besides spend a lot of time grieving and trauma dumping?
Right. Well, one, if you just have no idea, get some advice or ask someone you trust. But really, like, as you're delivering things like this, don't just read talking points as they've been handed to you. Find a way to make them truthful to you so it makes sense, or else people sniff a script out a mile away. And try to use phrases like, here's what I know, here's what I don't. Just be truthful. People appreciate that a lot, and they can handle stuff better, and they can help you and support you as a leader if they're aware of the full situation. And like, last but definitely not least, is just build trust by showing humanity, and don't try to be polished all the time. And I know that's the scariest thing ever. Being a leader is like taking off your armor, but a little vulnerability goes so far. Like try it once, see what happens.
Or to use one of your common lines, take off your cape because you're not a superhero leader.
Pick up your cape. Yeah, you don't need to be, your team doesn't need a superhero who is and does everything for them.
Thanks everyone for listening to Why Not Lead Like People Matter. Subscribe, share, and connect with us on LinkedIn, and keep leading like people matter.